Hello and welcome to Navigating the Four podcast, where we discuss all things faith, healing, leadership, and communication. Exploring the topic of communication, I'm Matt Barker, and I'm joined by the other hosts of the podcast. Tackling the topic of faith, we have Freed Hardeman, Professor of Bible, Matt Cook. Matt, welcome.
Hey, thanks. It's fun already.
Yep. And tackling the topic of leadership, we have Assistant Dean of Emerging and Innovative Programs at Freed Hardeman, Mr. Jared Gott. Jared, welcome.
Glad to be here.
And finally, exploring the topic of mental health, we have Director of the University Counseling Center at Freed Hardeman, Mr. Nathan Judd. Nathan Judd.
Thanks for having me on.
So,
my timing is impeccable.
That's right. Yeah. So thanks for joining us this episode of Navigating the Four, where we bring you real talk, fresh perspectives, and a few laughs along the way, hopefully. Whether you're in the middle of figuring out life or just here for some good conversation, you're in the right place. So grab a seat, maybe a cup of coffee, and let's start navigating the four together. All right, so just to give you a little background about this podcast, we have 4 different areas that we will cover: faith, healing, leadership, and communication. And we're getting into the most awkward conversations or situations that we've all been in and how to survive them and how to get through them more effectively. So this is kind of one that I thought of with communication. As I was thinking about this episode, we've all had different things that we've encountered throughout our life, and I have too many that I could really count in this episode because I'm just like the king of awkward things that always happen. So when we think about awkward conversations, it could be maybe running into someone that you don't know their name and you have to figure out, how do I talk to this person that I can't remember who they are? You know, the classic one is like when your wife asks you something you never were listening to her to begin with. That's always awkward because you don't know how to respond.
That never happens to me.
Never to any of us. No. So I want to go through first and talk about, just maybe each of us talk about an awkward encounter, awkward situation, awkward conversation that we've had. I'm just going to start with Jared. Jared's directly here to my left. So Jared, start off with your awkward situation that's maybe happened more than once in your life.
Yeah. So when I first started at Freed Hardeman, I was in admissions. I was a recruiter for a few different states. And so definitely I had a lot of those encounters of running into people in everyday life or when I'm in certain areas. And they'd be like, oh, I saw you at such and such event, and just kind of, having to learn to be like, oh, yeah, I think I might remember you, instead of just looking at them and being like, no, I actually no. But when Matt sent out this topic, the awkward encounter that really stood out to me, and I did double check with my wife, she was cool if we share this story. So for those of you who are listening and may not know my family, my wife, Sasha, is South Korean. She was adopted when she was just a few months old by her parents who live in Oklahoma. We met at Freed Hardeman. And so we were traveling for admissions and had gone down to a little church. And when we got there, my expectation was I'm just going to go up to the youth group class and do my normal spiel of, hey, here's what Freed Hardeman's about, fill out this white card, for a chance to win a shirt, and then be on our way. And so we got there, and I had my little travel case and everything, and they said, well, before you go talk to our youth group, you have to meet with the elders. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's different, but sure. And so we go into this little conference room, and these 3 men came in, and they were waiting on someone else. And so while we're sitting there, I introduced myself, I introduced my wife, and we're talking, and one of them turns to my wife and says, so now where are you from? And she said, oh, well, we live in Henderson now, but I'm from right outside the Tulsa area. And then he does the follow-up question of, no, but where are you from? Oh, no. Right? Oh. And so she said, oh, well, I was adopted from South Korea when I was a baby from Seoul. And he said, now that's the good Korea. Oh. And she said, yeah, okay. And we're both just kind of looking at him, right? And he said, no, what I'm saying is, my country and your country are friends. And she said, well, I am American, and as are you. And so, yes, our country is a friend to itself. And he said, no, what I'm saying, and at this point, hand gestures.
He just won't stop.
He won't stop. And so at this point, hand gestures are involved, right? And he was like, my country, pointing to himself, and your country, and then put his hands together like in a handshake, our friend.
Oh, like she can't speak English?
Right. When to hear her on the phone, it's just a very Southern drawl at this point. And so I was like, what is happening? Like, what are we even doing here? and came to find out they had an open like youth ministry position, I guess, and thought that that's why I was there. And I was like, I just need to go upstairs and do my job so we can hit the road. So that, I mean, we still laugh about that, like, and tell people about that. It's still one of the more awkward conversations. I mean, you know, today's age, rarely are we having those kinds of conversations, but there's still a few of them.
I think you win.
I think yours is going to top all of ours. But so as we go through these, I want to also talk about what are some ways. Maybe Jared, you're pretty much an open book, so you usually tell us how you feel about things anyway, right? But
okay.
But like, so you maybe think back at that situation. You're like, I don't know, maybe if I handled that the best, but maybe if you're in that situation, what would be a good way to respond to someone that's doing that in the moment?
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I easily can understand why people would get offended in that conversation, and all the credit in the world to my wife. I mean, when there have been conversations like that, there is an enormous amount of grace that gets shown, because I don't think, I mean, this individual wasn't coming at the conversation intentionally trying to be hurtful or insulting or
racist.
anything, or racist or anything like that. I mean, he was trying to make some kind of connection and understanding, and that happens a lot. Like, we'll be talking to individuals, and especially it's somewhat of a generational thing, right? There will be individuals who when they find out, like, oh yeah, our kids are, half Korean or whatever, they'll be like, oh, when I was in Korea, right? Like, going back to the Korean War. And it's not, they're not trying to.
Yeah, they're trying to relate to it in
they're
some
not
way,
trying to diminish anything or boil things down, oversimplify, like, oh, now I understand Korea, right? But that is a connection point for them. And so they are just trying to find some way to, like, engage that conversation. And that's the only point of reference they have. So I think that conversation actually was handled about as well as it could be without giving offense to that gentleman. I mean, I could have maybe asked him, what are we doing, a little earlier, but it definitely could have gone a very different direction where things got heated and escalated, and just been a negative all the way around.
Yeah, so I think Jared's story does win, and I think his point.
We don't know if it won. We haven't heard any other stories.
It's a pretty good one, but I think your point in giving grace is a good point to make. When we have these awkward conversations, giving people as much as we can the benefit of the doubt is important, because a lot of times, as you said, they're not coming at it from a contentious point of view. They're just sometimes trying to make conversation.
At the same time, though, is there a point at which, as leaders, especially in churches, we need to remind people that just because you think because of your age you've earned the right to say whatever you want to say, that nobody, like what Scripture says about, like, controlling our words and being encouraging, like, that applies to everybody. You don't reach an age where you're like, I'm such and such years old, and so I've earned the right to say what I want to say whenever I want to say it. I literally said that yesterday in a sermon at church. We're talking about, like, we're talking about communication in marriage.
There you go.
And I said, listen, I love our older generation, but just because you're however many years old doesn't mean that you can say whatever you want to say. Because I think people think, well, I've earned the right to say. No, you've earned the right to, like, give wise insight and encouragement. You haven't earned the right to be a jerk.
Yeah.
That may have been too direct.
No.
I've just been a jerk.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. All right. So transitioning, since you're talking here, Matt, what's the awkward situation that you've had, or awkward conversation?
Yeah.
How did you handle it?
Here's a real quick one related to what you mentioned earlier when you don't know somebody's name. My office downstairs on the second floor of this building that we're recording this in, a guy we were in school with came by, poked his head in the office, said, "Hey," couldn't remember his name. It's been a long time. I wasn't super close to him. And I was like, "Hey, man." And one of my colleagues, who's not a Bible faculty, he just happened to have his office up there at the time. I won't sell him out. He leaned in behind him and said, "What's his name?"
I love that.
Calling you out on
I
it.
love that.
Awful. And it, fortunately, like, I sat there in silence for 5 seconds, and then it came to me, like, when I forced myself to learn. So that was really awkward.
Yeah.
But I think from my perspective, the most awkward conversations are those situations where spiritually you feel like something needs to be said, like something does need to be, you need to have a tough conversation.
Yeah.
And having those conversations that require, oh boy, I hate to use the word correction. Those are the toughest ones, right?
Yeah.
And so I know you guys have been in different situations where you lead camps, And so anytime you have to have a conversation with a teenager about something that they've done, and especially if that means you got to send them home.
Yeah.
I had one of those handful of years ago. He didn't even realize he had done anything. He had said something terribly, terribly inappropriate, race-related.
What did he say?
And I can't. It was like, it was shocking when I heard it. And like, we're in the South, right? We're in the American South. And so it was just something he'd heard. And it got overheard by other people. I got calls from parents from other parts of the country. And then the worst part about, I have to talk to this kid. He doesn't even know what he's done. Doesn't realize it. So that's awkward. I have to talk to the parents of the kid, the minority parents of the kid who heard it, and they're really upset. And so I've got to have that conversation. And then I go into some leaders here on campus. I was like, here's what's happened. You guys need to know. They're like, yeah, we think a statement needs to be made before the whole camp. I was like, okay, so you guys, one of you will do that? And one of them would be specifically well prepared to do it because he's a minority. And they both looked at me and smiled and said, no, you got it. And so I got to make the statement about race. Incredibly awkward. And then you've got some kids who, this was kind of in the middle of a lot of political turmoil, and so you've got some kids who are not minority kids who came to me afterwards and they're like, we don't like that you singled out. So just I'd say anything. Let's be real direct here. As a white man, anything related to race.
Yeah.
But as leaders, if we're going to stand for what's right, sometimes those conversations have to be had.
Yeah, you can't shy away from them. Sometimes that's the hardest part. You have to have those difficult conversations for sure. All right, Nathan, what about you? I feel like Nathan has lived his whole life with things that have happened. I bet you have a few stories you could share.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can't share them all. I have all these confidential conversations. Not that all of them are awkward, but every now and then you get in you just nod non-judgmentally, right? And like, oh wow, they just said that. I do have a serious one, but with some of the ideas you have here, like running into someone else whose name you forgot, I have a thing where, I'm not really good with names and faces anyway. And then when I see somebody out of context, like it throws me for a loop. And so I've had clients come up outside, and I'm a counselor, by the way, had clients come up out in public or something. Hey, Nathan. I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? How's life? And
buddy.
I know this person from somewhere. I've had current clients do that, and being out of context, it totally threw me for a loop. So I'm really bad with names and faces. And then I actually had a situation yesterday, and I was with my daughter. A teenager came up, hey, Nathan. And I'm like, oh, hey, man, how old are you now? And then I recognized his mom. I'm like, okay, the dots are connecting. But then Brooklyn, my oldest daughter, we were walking to the car. She was like, was that a client? And I'm like, you can't ask that question. Like, don't ever ask that question. So stuff like that happens pretty frequently for me. I was really trying to think about this and like a funny story. The situation that came to my mind was, Brooklyn, she's at the junior high now, and something switched from the middle school to the junior high. It's like such a drastic jump. And so she had spent the night with a friend, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of what this was, but he came to me the next day. He was like, man, they were joking about this. And I was like, what? Like, we just skipped all these other things.
Yeah.
And they're like telling all these jokes. And so I ended up sitting her down and just having a conversation with her about it. And that was already really awkward. I'm like, do you understand what you're saying? And it was so awkward. And then she and the same friend went to church, and I don't know what she was thinking, but she was like showing her midriff, like had her shirt tucked in a way she was showing her midriff at church. And on the drive home, I'm just like, we got to have a talk. So I just, with her friend in the car, was like, girls, you need to have respect for yourselves. And things are not always about making guys happy and getting guys' attention. And I mean, her friend was just, what do I do with this, And but it was just,
I'm stuck here in this car.
It was a series of things building where I'm just like, we can't put this conversation off anymore.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we're going to have this conversation. So,
Man.
I wonder if what makes some of these conversations easier is when they do build to a point where it's like, okay, we got to have this.
Yeah.
Like I think my temptation is kind of put it off. And then something happens and it's like, okay, this isn't hard anymore because I have to do this.
Yeah. That's where I was, but it was still awkward. And more awkward because her friend was in the car. And her friend's not doesn't normally go to church and things. And so I think she was back there kind of laughing because she didn't know how to handle it. And but I will say Brooklyn came to me later and was like, hey, I appreciated that. I thought that was cool. But
don't ever do it again.
In the moment, it was pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, and what you mentioned there is one of the ones that I had written down when laughing during times where it's supposed to be serious, and that's where I've gotten myself in trouble throughout my whole life, especially when I'm around one of my sisters, Jamie, who's the one that's 4 years older than me. I have 3 older sisters. And so one of them is 2 years older than me, one of them's 4 years older than me, and the other is 6 years older than me. And one in particular, Jamie, who is 4 years older than me, I can't sit next to her anywhere because notoriously I will laugh during the most inappropriate time, whether it's during a prayer, I can't look at her we're all supposed to be praying anyway, but during a funeral, I've done that before, and that's awkward because you're sitting there in a situation that's supposed to be very you're honoring someone's life, solemn occasion, all that kind of stuff. And I will just look over at her and just can't stop laughing. And you're laughing. And so it leads to these awkward, I feel like I need to go up to that person and be like, I was not laughing because I'm happy during this thing. I'm just very uncomfortable. And when I'm uncomfortable, I laugh. So mine have kind of been awkward conversations, encounters have mainly been self-inflicted. I've put myself in this because I am uncomfortable, so I'm going to laugh. And it's not, but I can't help it. I just laugh, especially when I'm around certain people. Even at church now, if there's people, if I look at them during certain songs or certain things going on, I will laugh, and I'll have to go out to get myself together and it's a problem. It really is. I'm sure there's some reason. Nathan, you're a counselor. You could tell me. I probably have
I don't know.
Some reason, but that's always been the ones for me. It's laughing during inappropriate times.
I talk for a living, every day. I teach classes or preach. And so, if this were an episode on mistakes that I've made or things I've said wrong, we'll save that for another day because I've got a long list of them. Some of them are embarrassing. Some of them are pretty close to cuss words. Some of them are...
Which ones?
Well, I'll give you one.
Thank you.
In a class here at Freed-Hardeman, I tried to say fellowship, except I ended it with not the letter P. My best one. Since we're here, we were going to give a gift to one of our missionaries, a cash gift, because they had to go back home. And so we were kind of collecting money just from the congregation. And my thought was, when I was on the field, everybody's getting iPads. And I remember when we were in the mission field, coming home, be like, wow, I wish I had an iPad. And so I was thinking something like, what is it that when he's come home to the States, everybody's getting, and he wished he could have one. And I had in mind grown-up things that grown-ups like toys, grown-up toys. And I said, maybe he can buy himself an adult toy. And see, that one was, usually I will stop and laugh and make fun of myself. That one, I think I just froze for a second. Of course, you got kids in the audience, so I just smiled and kept going because we were going to help our missionary buy us an adult toy.
I would have lost it. I would have lost it if I was in the audience.
I would have too. And I think y'all are highlighting an important difference. There's moments or conversations that I think are embarrassing, right? When you say something like that. Yep. But that's, I think, handled differently. That just kind of deals with how much embarrassment can you personally endure. Right. Yeah. And then there's the awkward conversation that we're talking about, that could almost be confrontational. Or, you were talking about with the camp, man, I don't want to have this conversation with anybody about anything, but I've got to do it, sort of a thing. But the embarrassing one, I think.
I hadn't thought about that. When you use the word awkward, it could be different things. That's pretty cool. Because mine was the serious, I don't want to have this conversation. But it's not a funny story. I mean, yours now, looking back, I'm assuming
now
it's just
looking back,
funny.
we can laugh at it.
Yeah.
So going into the second part here, what causes these awkward conversation situations? And I guess I'll start off here. A lot of times I think what makes things awkward and just situations uncomfortable is probably generational differences or just cultural differences as a whole. Jared's example for, trying to relate to someone that's different than you or you think is different than you, maybe from their background, maybe some experiences that they've had, maybe someone that's older trying to communicate with someone that's younger and trying to relate to them, that can cause some awkward conversations, maybe in the content that they're discussing, maybe just in the way that they're doing it. The language that kids use today, older people trying to use that language just does not usually hit well. It's usually just they're just laughing at you and things like that. So that's kind of, I think generational differences for me is probably one of them.
Yeah, I want to say also there, when you're talking about the generational differences, and certainly I think most of the stories that I'm thinking of are where someone who is older tends to make things uncomfortable with somebody who's younger. But working in youth ministry for a while, there are so many examples where someone younger makes things unnecessarily uncomfortable for people in older generations as well. Like it's certainly not a one-way street. And so, I mean, even having to just explain to parents what new slang means, or, my kid said this word, I don't know what that is, or, they've asked for this gift from some kind of media property or whatever, a Netflix show, an anime, whatever, is this okay? Am I allowed to do it? And I'm like, no, actually, don't do that thing. It goes both ways, both groups communicating in ways that make it uncomfortable for the other one.
Yeah, and I think a lack of self-control often leads to these conversations. Somebody said something they shouldn't have said because they didn't know how to control their words or keep their mouth shut, and they said something, and then boom, now there's drama, and now we got to have these conversations.
Yep.
And then I don't want to do this just because I'm like coming at this from the faith perspective, but often these conversations are kind of rooted in sin, right? Somebody's done something, whether it's a lack of self-control or even with kids, they don't even know they're joking about sexual things, right? Somebody's done something, and it's like, oh man, and I guess maybe that's our problem. We're really uncomfortable in our culture confronting that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I am. It's incredibly uncomfortable. And I don't know if that's part of if that's normal or if that's just cultural. I don't know, but nobody likes to have to address when we've messed up.
Well, and this isn't going to be a rant on everybody, they're in their phones and technology, but self-awareness, right? I mean, picking up on, I don't know if we're getting into this or not today, Matt, but just the social cues, even nonverbal type cues of, yeah, that's okay to say, no, actually, that's not okay to, say it that way. And I think as we see, at least I personally think that I see more and more people who are lacking self-awareness. That's going to continue to make communication somewhat worse.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had something I was going to say. I was really intent on what Jared was saying there. So thinking about, though, these generational differences, I think a lot of it has to do with personality, too. Some people are just more open to expressing their point of view, like Matt Cook was talking about here, because their personality is just where they're not really scared to do that. I'm very much a kind of reactive and don't really like confrontation, so I'm more shying away from it. People that are more likely to be engaged in those conflicts and different things and like it, they're more likely to tackle those tough conversations, awkward conversations, where I'm more likely to avoid it as long as possible. So I think personality maybe has a little bit to do with the different, what causes some of these things. Sometimes people are just very open about having these conversations, and people that are a little bit more timid feel a little bit more uncomfortable with that. So that's probably part of it too, is just personalities.
Let me ask y'all a question just because I thought of it in the moment. We've been talking about things that are uncomfortable, and I think we are all somewhat coming at it from the perspective that Matt Cook just talked about, which is from a religious background, right? When you're talking with somebody, there is grace that needs to be given. There are times that, you need to season your words and you need to be thoughtful about both what you're saying and how you're receiving communication from others. And I think, let me start here. I agree with all that, right? Yes, everyone check your words. That's a good thing. Are we speaking in a way that demonstrates Christ? Are we speaking in a way that is benefiting others and building one another up? But I think, Matt, when you were talking, that I just thought about was, I think there are times that we could default to too passive of a communication, or not needing to say the thing that needs to be said, and cloak it under, well, I don't need to do that, right? I don't need to be too confrontational, right? Because that's not what a Christian would do. When actually, there are times that we need to be the person that says the thing, not the thing that's insulting or the thing that is offensive, but that just tackles the conversation and doesn't sit back and say like, well, I need to be a lamb in my speech kind of a thing. Like, no, at times.
Yeah, at times we have to be assertive on certain
style,
things.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to actually assert it and whatever, have the tough conversation.
Yeah, I'm thinking about something that I talk with people about quite a bit. And we live in the South, and there's this, Southern Christian culture, do unto others. And
Jesus said that actually. Just
well, yes, but I think it gets twisted. Yeah. It gets twisted. This is really awkward, Matt. This is making the list. No, but we use that phrase, and we're like, we're not allowed to say anything that upsets anyone.
Yeah,
right.
And conflict in and of itself is bad. And so I talk with people about basically the 3 different types of confrontation, and there's passive, there's aggressive, and then there's assertive. And so passive is when we hold it in, that something's building up inside of us. Aggressive is when we lash out, like, how dare you say that? That is the worst thing in the world. And then there's assertive, which tries to blend the positives together. It's like, I'm saying this in a way that's not trying to offend, but also I'm letting you know where I am. And when we have conflict with people, it really should be an opportunity to try to draw closer. And so if I'm passive, then I withdraw from the other person. If I'm aggressive, they withdraw from me. But if I'm assertive, hopefully we can actually leave the conversation and be closer. So I think when we address these things, it's like how we address it is really important too. So.
All right, so we already touched on this a little bit when we were giving our stories about the awkward situations, but next part here, surviving and thriving in the awkward. So not just getting through it, but how do we learn from those things, those awkward conversations, those awkward situations? Kind of want to leave everyone with, like, what can we do maybe to not only do these things better, have these conversations that are needed a lot of times, be more assertive, some of those things we've already talked about, but how can we maybe embrace this awkwardness and thrive in it and maybe do things better the next time? For me, it was mainly trying to be real about it, use some humor, make fun of yourself, realize that these situations are going to happen, not to try to take yourself too seriously. Understand that those situations are going to happen in life. I think that's important to understand. There's nothing wrong with you if you have these awkward situations, these awkward encounters. It usually means that you're actively engaged in other people's lives to even have these conversations to begin with. But just using humor, understanding that those situations are going to happen, being real about it, I think is important because it's going to happen. It happens to everybody throughout life. Any other thoughts that y'all thought of with how to thrive in the awkwardness?
I do a similar thing. I actually tell a lot of people, like, hey, I'm really awkward. When I'm in my comfort zone, when I'm in a counseling session or when I'm hanging out with my friends, no problem. I'm probably not super awkward. But put me in a mix and mingle event, and I am the weird guy in the corner.
Me too. I hate it.
And I actually got invited to a get-together for a friend. He was having something for his son, and they invited me, and I didn't know anybody there. And my family went with me, and we just kind of sat down in an area, and I feel like I make it worse when I try to mingle, but then I'm awkward when I stay off to the side.
Yeah.
So anyway, we sat off to the side. My friend eventually came over, and I was like, hey, I've just realized I'm an awkward person, so I'm really glad to be here, and I don't want you to think we're uncomfortable in the corner. Like, this is just kind of how I operate. And he was like, oh, okay. And that actually took the discomfort away. Then we had a conversation just by going, hey, I realize I'm being awkward. It's fine. I'm good with it.
Anyway.
Yeah, and connected to that, sometimes, especially with the ones that aren't just like awkward, but like confrontational, having somebody else in the room, a third party,
balance it out a little bit.
It out. You don't want to overwhelm somebody, but just having somebody else in the room is probably wise, right? So accusations can't be thrown unfairly later on. But then I would say, like, especially with the ones that are confrontational, not awkward funny, but awkward tough. Mm-hmm. Like, I wanna pray about it ahead of time and trust the Spirit's presence in that conversation. I'm not alone in this. I don't want to do it. I don't want to have it. And I can make some excuses as to why I shouldn't be the one doing this conversation. So I forget to do that, right? Often. But like, I want to pray for God to work through this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared, what do you got?
Well, I was thinking 2 different things. I mean, one is, especially with younger people, I think maybe not overtly, but I try to communicate to them to just lean into the awkwardness. Like, especially when you're talking about things like evangelism and stuff like that. Like, it's more often than not going to have some awkwardness to it. So just get it out of the way. Like, just do the awkward part and start the conversation. And then from there, it becomes more natural and free flowing, and you can talk about things. But try I guess I try to communicate to them, like, don't let awkwardness be a hurdle. Just know, like, yeah, that's going to be tough for a few minutes until we get this conversation rolling. But thinking about my own awkward conversations and just how I have them, I think, one, I tend to try to, if I'm going to have an awkward conversation, I try to do it at a neutral site. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to have an awkward conversation in my office where it feels like you've now come into my area, or I don't want to go really to anyone else's office. Let's meet somewhere. Let's meet at a coffee shop. Let's go get lunch. I've rarely is an awkward conversation made worse by coffee or food being involved. Right. At the very least, gives you something to do with your hands.
Make sure you pay beforehand, though, because then it could get awkward.
Absolutely.
When you're waiting on that bill.
Absolutely. Or, if you know you're about to have an awkward conversation with somebody, treat them to a coffee, right? Like, go ahead and start it with, listen, I'm a fan of yours. I love you. You are my friend, but now we got to talk, through that. I just think there's ways to make things less awkward, and I think it just depends on the situation. I mean, some of them, there is no helping it. It's going to be bad no matter what. You just got to bear down and get through it. But, when you can, make awkward conversations less awkward.
Yeah. If you want the way to Jared's heart, always coffee's the way to go. Yeah. Jared's a big coffee guy, so everybody has different things they like. Coffee might be one of them. Anything else y'all can think of before we close? The listener question that we're going to have for today: what is your go-to awkward conversation survival move? So we've all kind of given ours, the way that we handle awkward situations, awkward conversations, the things that we do. So the question for the audience is, what is your go-to awkward conversation survival move? We'll have that posted on Spotify.
Yeah, I was going to ask, let's make this awkward. What's the listener question? Is that just a way for them to engage?
Yeah, it's a way they'll have a kind of a not a poll, but like a question that if they want to engage in the conversation that we just had on the episode. But there'll be a poll or a question that goes along with the episode after they've listened. They can kind of chime in with their thoughts on the things that they do that maybe help them through their awkward conversations. Hey, we're all learning together. So
we look forward to all your responses.
That's right. So we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining us today on Navigating the Four. We hope today's conversation sparked something real in your faith, your healing, your leadership, or your communication. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and keep navigating the four. We'll see you next time on Navigating the Four podcast.